We had a call come in with this prospect that wanted to find somebody desperately because he was up against a wall to hit court dates. He was unsuccessful with the skip tracers and the other agencies that he had used to try and locate this person. This was a rush, so we knew that this was a rush. Mm-hmm. So we got right on top of this file. He paid for rush fees. We were able to find her within a short period of time. Took us 3 attempts to try and serve her, but we were able to because we were doing both the locate and the serve. So the outcome for this client was excellent, and he has subsequently come back to us to use us again.
And that's the benefit with our agency versus others being a national brand, right? There's some companies who, they might be Toronto focused or, Calgary focused or wherever they are, but that doesn't mean they have the resources. And we have resources across Canada and access to information across Canada that ultimately gives us more of a leg up in finding that information. So it's not uncommon for us to hear stories like that where, someone's reaching out to other companies to no avail, and then they reach out to us and we're able to find the needle in the haystack. So that's awesome that, that client was able to find that individual and get a case solved, and
we've gained more business.
Yeah, I mean, that's always good, right? Because that just helps them find, they value us, and there's more trust in that relationship because they know that we can find the individuals and the tough stuff, we can do it.
It's the trustworthiness, I think, that really was accredited here because of how quickly we were able to move.
Yeah,
and it is because of the amount of resources we do have.
Yeah. Yeah, and being a skip trace company across Canada, that's what we do. So, we find people sometimes in a day's notice if that's the, the predicament that a person's in and we need to find somebody quickly. Whatever it takes is definitely going to be our motto.
Great.
Yeah, I like to talk about the reality of cases, right? What we can and can't do. So when people call us with certain situations and there's maybe emotional, mental, physical stress that's taking place, how do we navigate that where you want to ultimately help somebody, but sometimes, you also don't want to take advantage of the position that they're in, or, there might not be bugs in their house, but then again, we've had people that, are crazy sounding, and then you never know. So
I think, I'll just say whenever I answer the phone, somebody's calling because there's an issue. So I do treat every case that knocks on the door as something that they need my attention, me to listen fully, and then to break down what it is that we can actually do for them.
Right.
And I try not to listen to, maybe their frantic piece or where they're highly emotional, because then, I want to be the voice that's calm for them and see how we can navigate through this together. And I feel that once we've established that kind of rhythm in the intake, the call, then we can get to the bottom line and say whether or not we can and cannot help them.
Right.
There's some cases that have come in that we just absolutely can't. But we have to let them down gently and let them know that's not a service that we could provide. It's outside of our scope, and try and explain why.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to, put in a private investigator in their trunk to sneak them into a house.
Yeah, because those situations are asked.
Yeah, so I have had some people request things like that, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get a private investigator, to do things that are not quite as, that are not legal.
Well, it's because people think we're 007, right?
Yeah.
They think that we can just do anything and there's no law and no any barrier in between us and the truth. And you're like, but there's the law and ethics, and there's actually quite a few things that...
And there's this one thing called the Canadian Privacy Act that is a really great big thing that some people just don't understand, that we personally cannot hack in, or as an agency hack into phone, emails, DMs, their social media. So, it's taking a look and a step back and saying, how can we really help you? What is it that you're really looking to achieve?
Yeah. And I've seen companies that advertise saying as if they do those things. And it's like, first of all, if somebody's even advertising that they do that, either they're lying or they're someone you don't want to work with, because you're not going to be able to use that information. It won't be admissible in any fact, in any court setting, in any place that you're trying to take it. So it's like, why obtain it? You're paying for it for what point? You could also get in trouble because you're knowingly purchasing something that is not legally obtained. So, there's also that side of just being cautious that, they don't involve themselves in something that's dangerous.
Yeah. And, we have had some great success with, cases that have come in that I didn't think that we had a creative solution for. But, that's where we collaborate as a team really, really well.
Yep.
And say, what if we did this? We could get, this information. it's a lot of research and fact-based information that leads us down that path that ultimately leads to the success for that client.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, I think a very powerful thing with this agency as well is
Yeah,
the
it's a think
collaboration.
outside of the box mentality.
Yeah.
Because if we just do what typical investigators do, then we're just going to be limited by that versus really thinking outside the box. And I think that's the power of women in this industry too, is our ability to just multitask and really think outside of the box.
Yep. We do that a lot.
Yeah, well, it helps.
Okay.
So what would you say you're 6 months into your investigative role in the investigative industry? What would you say is like your wow, or what are you most surprised by, I guess?
I am always surprised by the sheer amount of calls we do receive.
Right.
And in like inquiries. I did not realize that there were that many people that were in need of something else.
Yeah.
The ones that obviously tug at your heart are those that were adopted and they're looking for their adopted families. Those are the ones that, take a lot of research in the DNA and that area of the business that's, specialized. But it's a lot of cases, I think within the last, 6 months that have been coming in have been, I can chalk it up to three things. Surveillance, typically for infidelity.
Right.
Insurance fraud.
Yeah.
So WSIB, WCB claims that have come in, and skip tracing.
Yeah.
So those seem to be the ones that I'm dealing with a lot more.
Yep.
There's the odd ones that come in that you just, somebody, is a famous car that was sold through generations and, ones that are really unique stories that at the end of the day, those ones are fun, but those don't come in every single day. It's the other ones where people are just looking for, a tenant that's damaged their apartment and they've just skipped town and left them holding a lot of damage that they have to pay for, or they've left without paying the rent. So there's a lot of that goes on out there.
I think that's the interesting thing. Anytime I travel and people ask, oh, what do you do for a living? And you say, I'm a private investigator. They want the infidelity story right away because they think that's all we do. But it's like, yeah, sure, that's a portion of the industry. And absolutely, we're seeing more and more. I would say post-COVID, we've seen more and more infidelity situations. I think as life gets stressful for people, they potentially run into extramarital affairs. So I think there's an increase since, you've had COVID, now you've got inflation and cost of living and, all the challenges that for some reason that seems to be people's outlet.
Yeah. And I do giggle because I go, your spider senses are tingling enough that you're calling an agency to validate and prove.
Yep.
In my head, it's like, listen to those, spider senses.
Absolutely.
That something is going on.
Yeah, your gut's telling you something is wrong.
So there's a change of behavior. And yes, use an agency to gain that proof, to get your court-ready documents in line, to get your photo evidence, your video evidence, before you jump ship, make sure all your ducks are in a row.
You're making an informed decision, especially because if people have families and kids and, there's a lot more involved, finances, and a divorce can be costly and expensive and messy. And if you can have the information and then you can make a solid decision if you choose to leave or whatever somebody does, then you're at least making that informed decision of like, okay, this was the right thing to do.
Yeah, with the facts.
Yeah, especially we see too, families will, if a woman just says, oh, I think my husband's cheating, or maybe it's the husband, he says, I think she's cheating. And, they try and go to, their families and tell them, well, I'm leaving so-and-so because of this. And the families don't believe it. Oh, there's no way he or she would do this. So having that evidence to be like, no, this is what happened. Because otherwise people might judge them for breaking up a family without proof or without any real knowledge. So it's helpful for people to reach out to an investigator and really get that information, have that evidence. And then you can feel good about a decision you've made because you know what took place.
Yeah. And a lot of our surveillance, it does fall on, the infidelity. There's other things like the counter surveillance that we've been doing, where we're following the client themselves to say, they are getting harassed on the street. Police aren't believing them.
Yeah.
So they want proof.
Yeah.
So we've been able to deploy that. And, we're finding that in certain urban areas that's more prevalent, that it's happening that way. But just me coming in, like, it was shell-shocked the first month because it was just wide-eyed, going, what's going on?
Right.
What's wrong with society that everyone needs to call over a PI? Yeah. And it's just now I'm in a rhythm where it's, I do feel like I'm helping, at least that's what I feel.
Right.
And just being, a cordial person in the process of doing it. I had a really sweet elderly gentleman call in, and he was looking for a woman that he used to date when he was like in his early teens. And
I love
so
those.
it's like, he's like 89 years old now,
Yeah.
looking for the love of his life.
Aw. We've had a few of those over the years that you're, unfortunately sometimes they're deceased and so you're not
Yeah.
able to help them find that individual.
Yeah.
But, sometimes they find them and maybe the person's married and, it's not a happy, happy ending love story. But, if you can even see anybody matched together after God
All
knows
those
how many years,
years.
right? 50, 70, 100, whatever amount of years.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool story to be a part of.
Or like people now, I think that some of the locates when they're elderly or they're sick, and they're reminiscing about their past, like they want to reach out to their old university roommates,
Yeah.
that they had great kinship with. So those are a few cases that we have had dealt with since I've started.
Did you expect, so, I know I've been doing this for almost 20 years, so, I'm certainly used to the calls that are, quite emotional, quite charged in a lot of ways. Did you expect that when you kind of came into this industry that you would be dealing with those types of calls, or did you have a perception of what the type of client would be that we deal with?
I think with the training that, we did, it did prepare me, and it was just listening to some of the history, the back calls that, had
Right.
taken place. So I get a sense of.
That's why those calls will be recorded for training purposes are helpful
Because
because
it
you never
truly
know
was.
when you need to display them. Yeah.
I think, like I said, like I come at this, calm when
Mhm.
I answer the phone, and just knowing that everyone's calling because they need some help of
Right.
some sort. And I think that when people are supercharged, I try not to let it like get me charged.
Sure.
So I don't escalate when they're escalating. I try to de-escalate. But there's been people have yelled at me.
Yeah. See, we're a little different in that way. I'll yell back. I'm
or I don't.
No, no, no. This phone call will end very fast if you're going to talk like that, especially when people are cursing. That to me is like, that
Yeah.
takes it a different level. It's like, I can understand if you're frustrated and whatever your situation is, but if it starts to turn disrespectful, there's no
We'll end it,
point in
yeah.
continuing the situation because we want to work with clients that are mutually, it's going to be a good beneficial relationship. We're respecting each other. We're here to provide information for you. And, we want a good working relationship.
And I have to say that while they might have yelled at me, I've never been sworn at.
That's
yet.
good.
Yeah.
That's
so,
good.
Which is
I don't even think they're meaning to swear at us. It can even just be excessive swearing in that they're
In the
explaining of the story,
conversation.
and you're like, we don't need that. Let's just try and stick to the facts of what's going on. But sometimes people can just be so emotional and so frustrated and whatever. Especially when you're dealing with infidelity situations, that's very emotional. They're dealing with families, spouses, potentially kids involved, and they're just thinking of their whole life just unraveling
Yeah.
before them. So they
Yeah.
can be, it can be quite challenging.
It heightens their
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think just keeping a calm demeanor on my end helps. Not just them, it helps me.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Right? 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't want that frustration either.
Well, and it's like when we're calm on our end, they're able to realize like, oh, okay, I can
Yeah.
just take a breath here for a minute and explain the situation. And I think there's that, especially with us being an office full of women, there's that compassionate and empathetic element
Yeah.
of who we are just naturally as women, but also with our investigative experience, we're able to really play the two sides of the coin to make sure that the person gets the experience they need in the conversation, but also has that really compassionate and empathetic viewpoint.
Yeah. The ones that I love, though, are the corporations, the businesses that call us, and it's an insurance fraud claim.
Yep.
Man, I just love getting those guys.
Well, they're so straightforward.
Yeah, but I love
Yeah.
the fact that we deploy it and boom, we've got a success. First hour out.
Yeah.
And it's like we caught them.
Yeah.
So for all those out there defrauding insurance boards, stop it.
Yeah. Well, it's also like, I love the ones my favorite ones, because I'm a hunter. So my favorite ones are when people get conveniently sick or slip and fall around hunting season. And all of a sudden they're, on light to modified duties. Well, it's like, damn well you're out there hunting. Like nobody's surprised that in October, Jim fell again and, he can't work for this 2 weeks. And, his doctor wrote him some magic note. So those are always the interesting ones where, you can get out and follow somebody or whatever time in season it is where they're just, maybe they're starting their own business on the side and, they just don't realize that ultimately someone ever might look into this and it's fraud.
Yeah. And I'm finding, though, that it's more the actual company versus their insurance company.
Yep.
that are coming to us because they want to get the action.
Well, they want to end it.
Yeah, they want action, and they want action now.
Yep. Yeah, because WCB, WSIB, they're only really going to take action if it gets to a certain point, or even, with insurance companies, motor vehicle accidents, it's going to get to a point, and then they're going to, initiate surveillance. Where if you're on the other end of that, you're like, no, I want answers and I want them now.
Yeah.
And especially when we see those, insurance type cases, you want to do surveillance right away so you can see what was right after the accident, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months after, because people could say, well, for the first couple months, I couldn't leave my bed and it was bedridden and, whatever. Meanwhile, they're out gallivanting around and they're completely fine. And then you can establish that pattern of, unrestricted and fluid motions and walking with a steady gait and lifting and leaning forward and all the things that come with a natural body movement versus, somebody who's got limitations and restrictions.
Yeah. No, we definitely had a few of those cases. One in particular, the individual was not supposed to be able to lift any weight and had issues with the hamstring.
Yep.
That individual was caught playing 18 holes of
I
golf.
love it, yeah. Golfing people are always my favorite subjects. I loved it because I'd just golf right behind them.
Yeah.
So I'd just be sitting there, teeing off and then, go buzzer ahead and, get my video, and you're like perfect scenarios for surveillance.
Yeah. Or the one where the individual came hobbling out of the doctor's office with a knee brace on or a half leg brace on. And then later you see them bench pressing and using leg lifts at the gym. Mm-hmm. So, it's definitely, there's, a lot of culprits out there.
We used to always, the best ones are when there's a medical appointment coming up. So it's like, oh, Tuesday at 10 a.m. so-and-so's got a medical appointment. And if you know where it is, you can meet them there ahead of time, especially because sometimes we don't know where a subject lives.
Right.
Sometimes they've lied or they're saying they live with family that they don't or whatever. So sometimes you have to wait for a medical appointment to come up and then you're following from there. And I love the ones that you see them because you have a, picture, you see them pull into the parking lot and then they literally go to their trunk and they put on neck braces and knee braces and arm braces. I've seen all sorts of stuff where you're like, in the parking lot, and then they walk upstairs, they go to their appointment and then go back out, throw all the stuff in the trunk and gallivant about their day. And you're just like, oh my God, perfect. It's like liquid gold, to get that kind of video. Cause what are the odds that, you catch that? But we see that quite often.
So for all those manufacturers out there or those corporations out there that have those people out, call us.
Yeah. Well, we'll help you.
We enjoy them.
Yeah, we'll help. At the end of the day, you're going to have to just deal with WCB, WSIB in those situations, and then dealing with the potential modifications of duties when that person could just be outright being deceptive. And then why do you want to put the time and effort into making accommodations for them when there's no validity to what they're doing?
Yeah. I think the harder ones for me is when there's children involved.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So, being a mom, I don't understand how parents put children in unsafe environments. And sometimes it's, the courts because of the visitations or anything else. So there's been a few of those surveillance cases that we've, taken on successfully, but unsuccessfully for the family.
Absolutely.
So, with the, one of the parents, intoxicated while driving their little kid around. Yeah. Things like that break my heart. That's where I get emotional, but not to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's such a contradiction of a feeling as an investigator, especially when you're out there obtaining that evidence. Because on one hand, that's what you want. Yeah. That's the smoking gun. But then that's breaking up a family. That's, taking a mom or a dad away from that child's life. That's, it's such a challenging emotion. Like even so many times in infidelity cases, where I've obtained evidence and you see what you need and it's a job well done in terms of what you found and what you've obtained, but then you have to make that call to the client and inform them of what's happened. So it's like this horrible feeling where you feel good, but you feel terrible at the same time because professionally you did a good job, but now you have to really hurt somebody's feelings by giving them the truth, which they might have known it was coming and they might have known whatever, but it's different when it's presented in front of you in high quality, to see right there in front of your face.
Yeah. Crazy that I only started in May.
Yeah.
Coming from a completely different industry.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun of the skill sets that come from a different industry though.
Yeah.
like from being in the corporate world, which obviously we're in the corporate world, but a totally different, like we're such a niche industry anyway.
Yeah.
Putting out job applications for this industry is quite challenging because you're trying to get somebody who can tick a million boxes because, it's common sense and intuition and a million other skill sets that you're going to ultimately need somebody to have, but then also the ability to talk to people in challenging situations and remain composed in those situations. And then, seeing evidence, even some of our guys in witness statements and interviews and interrogations that we've done, some of them you have to interview kids and you have to interview kids about sex assaults and things that have happened. And those are really, really challenging when you have to listen to a child, explaining, and they're so innocent, and usually they're playing with a toy or doing something that's distracting, and then they're explaining something that happened, and you're just trying to listen and absorb this information because you need to document it, but it's also just incredibly heartbreaking at the same time.
We do get requests to find pets.
We did. Yeah. Patricia, who works with us one time, somebody wanted to find their cat, but unfortunately it was hard to find this cat. We did try, like we looked everywhere, but it was one of those odd ones that we tried to, as best as we could say, like, we cannot guarantee anything on this. Like, we will certainly conduct surveillance with as many investigators as you can afford within your area, but we never found the cat.
That's unfortunate. We've had somebody wanting us to surveil somebody's house thinking that their dog was inside. Like, my dog's in there.
Oh, no.
And they won't come to the door. We didn't actually end up fulfilling the file just because they weren't ready at the time.
Right.
But yeah, that was one of the ones that had come in that asked us to surveil neighbors.
I think cost becomes a thing. I think a lot of people, they'll call and they'll inquire, but like they'll be like, I want 24-hour surveillance for a month. And you're like, okay. And you give the pricing and they're like, what about like a day? And all of a sudden it goes like, you didn't need the 24/7 for, ongoing. But I think people just can have no concept of the price. Or, I've had people be like, well, isn't it like minimum wage? And you're like, well, imagine calling a lawyer. Would a lawyer work for minimum wage? Like, absolutely not. We're a professional industry just like they are, right?
Yeah.
So our evidence helps successful potential outcomes in a court situation. Like, of course that's going to come at a cost. Like, you want somebody who's experienced and licensed and assured and all the things that come with it.
And I think also when it comes to surveillance is people understanding that if you're in a high dense area, we will need more than one PI on the case at the time, because it's easy to lose somebody in a subway or on a streetcar or
in the downtown
jumping in
areas
an Uber and
and there's some, like, I've had subjects that literally took a streetcar, a bus, the subway, and bicycles in the same day. Because nowadays, even they have those like scooters that you just tap your phone and you jump on them now.
Yeah.
And somebody just zips across, 3 or 4 blocks in a matter of, minutes versus, maybe a 30-minute walk or something like that. So there's people who can be very challenging to find, or stay
Follow,
tracking in downtown settings for sure.